Well, hello and welcome to Overdevest Nurseries on a dull, cloudy, rainy afternoon in early spring. Lots of pretty plants as you see, and here on the nursery where we grow over 2,000 different varieties, I'd like to suggest that you think about clicking and subscribing to this channel because we're busy posting new videos all the time, and if you're a subscriber you'll find that each of these videos as we post new ones will turn up automatically in your feed. Now we've got lots of really nice shrubs and flowering perennials and grasses and vines, but we also have some very attractive fruiting plants too. Take for example this very good variety of the Highbush blueberry. This is one called Chandler, a variety that was introduced and released by the USDA in 1997, and one that, believe it or not, has fruit, delicious tasting, really big fruit the size of a quarter. It's hard to imagine this variety having fruit as big as that, and sometimes people describe it as having fruit as big as cherries. What I'd like to show you now in the early spring is just how pretty the flowers are on it, because as you see in springtime it produces masses of these really beautiful bell-shaped flowers that, if it never carried a blueberry on it, would be an attractive plant for you to grow. Now, that gives me the opportunity to suggest that this might be something that you would grow as an ornamental plant, kind of on the old cottage garden style, where gardeners would mix in all sorts of ornamental plants with fruiting and edible plants and herbs and climbers and vines and so on too. And you could do the same. You could grow this as a single specimen, mixed in beds and borders. Better still, you could plant this in a line and kind of grow it as an informal hedge. You could grow it in a wide variety of positions. But the neat thing about it, that as well as having pretty flowers and that very large fruit and very tasty fruit that I was talking about, it also carries very nice autumn color on it. The leaves will turn a lovely reddish purple going into the cooler months of the autumn too. As for growing it, you pretty much grow it along the same lines as rhododendrons and azaleas. You see, they like to grow in lime-free soils, ideally with a pH of around about 4.5 to 5.2. So you kind of grow it like that, but the difference with rhododendrons and azaleas is that really blueberries do better in a sunny location. This is one that will grow to about 5 to 6 foot high by about 5 to 6 foot wide, and if you're planting more than one you would space them at about 5 foot centers. Other than that, you'll find that it's really a very easy plant and accommodating plant to grow. When you're planting it, make sure that you dig a good sized hole and then use organic matter mixed in the backfill. But don't use a normal planting compost. You really need to use something like peat moss or pine bark. Composted pine bark would be ideal, because as I mentioned earlier, these are ericaceous plants, so they don't like lime in the compost. Also, it would be a good idea when you plant it, obviously water it well until it gets established, and then perhaps put down a layer of mulch. Again, pine bark is ideal because that is an acid-based mulch, and that will help to keep the roots nice and cool and also conserve moisture during the drier summer months. Once you get it growing, it'll take about 2 or 3 years before it gets into its strong cropping mode. And then when it gets to about 4 or 5 years old, that's when it's really going to carry an abundance of fruit. One of the neat things about these is that they're self-fertile. That means that if you just grow one plant, it will still carry blueberries on it. But obviously, the more plants you have that flower at about the same time, the better the cross-pollination and the heavier the fruiting. So this is a really delicious and very attractive variety of Highbush blueberry. This is Vaccinium Chandler.